I call this hearing to order. Today, the committee will examine the benefits of federal infrastructure leveraging programs to American taxpayer dollars. This is the 7th hearing our committee has held this year on improving our nation's highways, bridges, and water projects. These hearings have shown infrastructure is critical to our nation's prosperity. As America's population and economy have grown, our infrastructure has not kept pace. Maintenance shortfalls and project backlogs have left many key elements of our infrastructure and transportation in need of major repair and replacement. That's transportation as well as water. And as a result, major infrastructure improvements are needed across the country to build, to maintain, and to replace these vital systems. Timely decisions and timely construction are keys to success. The sooner a project is built, the sooner it can have a positive impact on lives of the people in those communities and those affected. Loan and loan guarantee programs often allow expensive projects to be delivered in a timely fashion and at a reduced cost. These programs are the Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, referred to as TIFIA, the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, called WIFIA, and the new Securing Required Funding for Water Infrastructure Now Act, the SRF-WIN Act. Well, TIFIA loans have been used very successfully for the construction of critical transportation infrastructure, and we expect to see similar success through WIFIA and SRF-WIN. These programs enable state and local project sponsors to borrow money at lower long-term costs and to complete construction years sooner than if funding were secured through other means. As we have heard in past hearings, leveraging federal funding to maximize investment is a tool that the Trump administration strongly supports. Two of these leveraging programs are key components of America's Water Infrastructure Act, the bipartisan legislation that we passed unanimously through this committee last month. Based on our water infrastructure bill, the Congressional Budget Office, or the CBO, has estimated that WIFIA program and the SRF-WIN program would receive appropriations of $400 million over 2 years. That expenditure would then be leveraged by state borrowing to generate $12 billion in new water infrastructure spending. Converting $400 million in federal resources into $12 billion in new infrastructure spending is exactly the kind of leveraging that President Trump has been calling for. This is particularly true for the SRF-WIN program, which is designed to help rural states. Such leveraging seems good for federal taxpayers as well as states alike. Congressional rules dictate that all bills be scored by the CBO to assess the amount of taxpayer dollars that are going to be spent, but also by the Joint Committee on Taxation, the JCT, to judge if any federal revenue will be lost. Well, states use tax-free bonds for infrastructure projects. JCT assumes that the federal Treasury will lose tax revenue when states borrow. So under their theory, the $12 billion in increased state infrastructure spending is presumed to cost the federal Treasury $2.6 billion. The committee has addressed this scoring issue by cutting back the size of the SRF-WIN program. These changes will be reflected in the version of the American Water Infrastructure Act that will soon be brought to the Senate floor. Now, I believe that leveraging programs such as WIFIA and TIFIA and SRF-WIN are good for federal taxpayers since they enable states to address more of their infrastructure backlog. If states aren't able to finance their infrastructure needs, well, then federal taxpayers will inevitably be on the hook to directly fund more projects in the future. So today, former CBO Director and American Action Forum President Doug Holtz-Eakin is going to share his observations on how leveraging programs can generate economic growth and demonstrate benefits to the taxpayer far beyond any loss of federal revenue. We'll also hear about successful projects using these programs in Delaware and in Santa Ana, California. So before we introduce our witnesses today, I'd like to turn to Ranking Member Carper for his remarks.